So here we are for part 2 of Describe How NT-LAN Manager is Vulnerable to Exploitation. In the first video we learned about what NTLM is, reviewed the word protocol, talked about how it's a successor, and now there's a successor to it called Cerberus. Cerberus is the preferred way to go. NTLM is implemented when you use the Security Support Provider API. APIs are great and useful. They're like robots who know how to drive a car. APIs are not very different from libraries, and the biggest, most successful tech companies love to offer you their APIs. Group policy is where you'll find information about your computer's use of NTLM. The way this protocol is implemented is a fun thing to learn. I tried not to get too deep into it, but at least along the way we had learned what a hash is and what the concept of salting is. Hashing can have problems, so it's not a sure-proof way of doing things. And you can further complicate hash by breaking it into 2 parts. Probably the biggest goal of videos like this is to prepare students for CTFs, just to open their mind to the world of cybersecurity. I usually teach an audience of young people, so it's great to go from cartoon Squirtles to the Squirtle toolkit. There's other tools I'd like to get into, Metasploit being one of them. But the last video really just told us that NTLM is broken. You don't want to use it, and in this video we'll go ahead and give you quite a few more details as to why you don't want to use it. So let's start with an example. One of the attacks presented in this Amplia Securities report, one of the attacks showed the ability to predict pseudo-random numbers and challenge responses generated by the protocol. So this is a very bad thing, right? If a computer is creating random numbers and you can predict what the computer is going to come up for a random number, well then it's not very random, is it? Those random numbers are used in a mixture with the username and password of a person to set up this challenge response protocol. Now, these flaws had been present in all versions of Windows for 17 years. The security advisory explaining these issues included a fully working proof of concept. So at the time of this video, we're talking about 9 years ago, and many of the flaws were fixed by MS-10.012, one of these Microsoft patches. So if you're in this class, I really hope you know what a proof of concept is. If not, go out and find a good definition and write that down. Let me move the rest of you up by 2 years. In 2012, it was demonstrated that every possible 8-character NTLM password hash permutation can be cracked in under 6 hours. So the word permutation I left in there, though it seems a little redundant, but I left it in there because we talk about that word in class. The beauty of permutations is the reason we have computers. Because of the variety of place values out there, we can encode things, we can compare things, and that's where the computer science part of class comes out, because when we do these things, there's always the same output. But if you could crack something in under 6 hours, that's a bad thing. The permutation is not strong enough. It says here to note that the password equivalent hashes used in pass-the-hash attacks and password cracking, this must first be stolen. You can steal these by compromising a system with the permission sufficient to access the hashes, but in a few of the CTFs we played, getting that root access has not been very hard. So it'd be cool if my students were able to escalate privileges somehow, and then when they find that those hashes, they'll know what to do with it. And it says here, these hashes are not the same as the NTLM SSP auth hash, which is transmitted over the network during a conventional authentication. So sure, we can have multiple hashes for multiple reasons. So let's take our first field trip. I want to read this article. It has a subtitle of Applies to Microsoft Windows Server, Standard, Enterprise 32-bit, and Enterprise 64-bit. So an article like this is probably being read by somebody who deals with these Microsoft servers. The title says it all: How to prevent Windows from storing a LAN manager hash of your password in Active Directory and local SAM databases. So instead of storing your user account password in clear text, Windows, made it bigger for you guys there, Windows generates and stores user account passwords by using 2 different password representations, generally known as hashes. When you set or change the password for a user account to a password that contains fewer than 15 characters, Windows generates both a LAN manager hash, called an LM hash, and a Windows NT hash. These hashes are stored in the local security accounts manager. That's what SAM stands for. So it stores it in this SAM database or in Active Directory. The LM hash is relatively weak compared to the NT hash, and it is therefore prone to fast brute force attack. Therefore, you may want to prevent Windows from storing an LM hash of your password. The article describes how to do this so that the Windows only stores the stronger NT hash of your password. Oh, it looks like a virtual assistant popped up down here. Wouldn't that be fun for us to click on and do a video recording interview maybe, but I'm not going to do that. Let me just skip down to this part that says, you may experience the following problems if you prevent the storage of LM hashes for your domain. You may find that users without an LM hash will not be able to connect to Windows 95 based computer or a Windows 98 based computer that is acting as a server unless the directory services client for Windows 95 and 98 is installed on the server. So there's going to be some compatibility issues. You may be wondering, why would people still be on Windows 95 or Windows 98? Well, there's these trade-offs. You see, when you have an old operating system like 98, you could count on quite a bit of security from it because it's old, it's been around. But as time goes on, it looks like these compatibility issues are going to cause problems for people who want to be on a network, the client-server type of network. Next, it says users on Windows 95 based computers, or 98 again, will not be able to authenticate to servers by using their domain accounts unless they have Directory Services Client installed on their computers. Okay, so if they have something old, they'll need to download something new, Directory Services Client. So let me skip these next two that continue to talk about the older operating systems and talk about a fresh Outlook 2001. It says users of Outlook 2001 may not be able to access their mailboxes on an Exchange server. Users may see the following error in Outlook. And so if you're staring at this, the login credentials were incorrect, and you know you put them in correctly, that's probably going to freak you out. And here's the two methods to prevent Windows from storing an LM hash of your password. You could implement the no LM hash policy by using group policy. So that was in the slideshow. So you can navigate to a group policy on a Windows 10 machine like this one by going there. And once you're here, feel free to poke around in these folders. It's a pretty good learning experience. Just don't go changing things unless you know what you're doing. And the second method is you could implement the no LM hash policy by editing the registry. So in my CIS 118 class, we spend about a month learning about Microsoft Access and wrapping our minds around what a database is and how relationships can exist in a database. The registry is basically the database for the Windows operating system. It stores settings for the operating system there. So are you going to go in and do these things? Well, no, unless you're on a Windows server. Okay, we've spent enough time here, so let's end that field trip and go to the article I talked about one of my students choosing this week. And I'm just going to scroll down to what I think is the most important paragraph. You see on here I did Control F and typed in NTLM, and then I just found this paragraph, and it's a pretty good one. In another default faux pas, Exchanger fails to set signing and sealing flags on NTLM authenticated traffic. Therefore, the attacker could perform an NTLM relay attack. We had talked about pass the hash attack. We talked about the ability to escalate privileges and authenticate that way. But only the picture in my last video gave you a hint as to the concept of this relay attack. It's basically a man in the middle. Is a man in the middle attack the same as a relay attack? I had to look that up. Just based on Wikipedia here, it says MITM is an attack where the attacker secretly relays and possibly alters the communication between two parties who believe they are directly communicating with each other. So that is exactly what this article is saying. And because Exchange fails to flag NTLM traffic, the person being attacked does not recognize this attack is occurring. So great article. It says there are workarounds. While Microsoft said that a planned update is in the works, currently no solutions exist to the flaw. However, if Exchange users think their systems are at high risk, a workaround exists. Potential impacted users would have on-prem deployments as Exchange Online is not impacted. So if you have an Exchange server on your premises, that's what prem stands for. If you have one there, you should be good, because the server is in like your internal network. And already this video is running a little long, so I'll make a part 3 where we take additional field trips to the SansDFer website, and of course one of my favorites, information security on Stack Exchange. So I'll go over NTLM on those two sites next time.